Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Detroit is Different. And if you didn't know, this place is located in a community that the CDC labels as Hope Village Revitalization. I still call it like 12th Street Davidson area, right? Focus Hope is the flagship organization that definitely a lot of folks know, hence the Hope Village, which was once a project of Focus Hope. And it's a lot of stuff over here. More so, the people over here make the rich community. But there's more things coming over this way. The biggest thing coming over this way is an equestrian farm. So it's like an equestrian farm. And a lot of people was like, what's that? Meaning that it's going to be a whole space where if you're interested in riding horses, learning how to ride horses, care for horses, and everything that deals with this, the arts of the equestrian farms. He gonna be able to come over this way because Detroit Horsepower is taking place right here in this community, right there, 12th Street, Linwood, Dexter, Davidson. These neighborhoods are gonna be engaging and learning a whole lot about what's happening with horses, all brought through who I got in the studio today. Mr. Silver, how are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, it is something that I knew was gonna happen because I was like, "Yo, he in the hood, so we definitely gonna have this discussion." So we always start this with the origins of Detroit. What's the relationship to Detroit? How you get this way?
Yeah, I'm from the suburbs of New York City originally, grew up
Mm.
in Westchester County, which is like 45 minutes north of New York City. Um, Went to college in New Hampshire, I went to Dartmouth, and then Teach for America is what brought me to Detroit. This was 2012,
Mm.
which is a whole thing we can definitely get into.
We definitely gonna talk about that because I definitely know that was a moment in time where a lot of people was like, "What in the hell is going on here?"
For sure. But I've lived in the city since 2012, was a elementary school teacher, 4th and 5th grade
Mm.
at, Burns Elementary Middle School, which is like Grand River and Greenfield.
Mhm.
And yeah, then, in 2014 decided to leave teaching, leave the classroom so that I could pursue those same goals of opening doors for young people through the incredibly privileged opportunities that I had had with horses when I was growing up.
Okay, so now let's talk New York City. We close in age, yeah, I'm assuming. But what was New York, Westchester? What was that community like? I'm guessing like I've seen it in. I immediately think of though it wasn't the best film, but the part two of Wall Street with with Gordon Gekko and driving way out and
That
everything, and
Greed is
like other
good.
movie, yeah. So like other movies like that where you're seeing the opulence of these people from Wall Street that buy houses like further away. But that's my thought process. But what was Westchester like growing up? What was the community? How did it feel?
Yeah, I grew up in a town called Chappaqua, which if anybody has heard of it, it's because the Clintons bought a house there so that Hillary could have New York residency when she ran for Senate in 2000. So, like, you picture, like, you're a former president, former first lady, and you have a choice of, like, a whole state where you could buy a house. They chose to buy in the town that I live in. So
Wow.
that gives you some perspective.
Mhm,
Very, affluent, privileged kind of bubble.
mhm.
Uh, a lot of Jewish people in Chappaqua. My family's Jewish. And yeah, I'd say a lot of people I knew growing up in high school, like the main thing you would do, because there's not much to do in like Chappaqua or in Westchester, is you take the train into Manhattan. Metro North is like the major train line, really easy to get into New York City. I'm a I'm a tourist when I go to New York City because I was always going the opposite direction because my family has had a really strong connection to horses for my whole life, something my mom has loved her entire life, but her her mom, my grandparents didn't really get, and she had to really, like, scrape by and, babysit as much as she could, put together money so she could have horseback riding lessons. So for me and my younger sister, it's something she always wanted to make available. It was, like, never really a question because we had the resources. It was something that she never really got to fully pursue, and it was something she was really committed to making available for me and my sister who's 3 years younger than me. So we were always driving north from where we grew up into more horse country. We're incredibly fortunate to have my own horse, have great riding instruction. We traveled and competed. It was like the dominant part of my life growing up was being with horses.
Okay, and horses were the mode of transportation before Detroit took over everything. I'm just okay.
The original horsepower.
Yeah, so hence horsepower itself. That's what it's called, and even the whole concept, the carriage, you know,
True.
the automobile, and what they would be and how they would be cared for, and this shifts. So horses in this territory, United States of America, were everywhere. Now, when we think about horses, we think of completely ag- agricultural spaces, but not even necessarily always agricultural spaces. It's like certain pockets. Definitely, if you go to Texas, you're going to see a lot of horses. And outside of Texas, I'd say like Arizona, some of the places where I know like the people coming up, it's like, okay, I'm a little bit familiar. Other than that, there are equestrian farms that exist. And New York, similar to Michigan and really a lot of places, but it's a lot of country in New York, especially when you go north.
That's right.
Though when we think of New York, we immediately just think, the Wu-Tang Clan, New York City, Wall Street, that. You're going north. Where are you going north to?
When you start getting so I grew up in Westchester County, the next county is, Dutchess County and Putnam County, so, like, just not that far north. This is, like, an hour outside New York City, really. The towns like North Salem and Brewster are the towns where we, boarded horses, so which boarding is like you have your own horse and you pay somebody to rent space in their barn to keep your horse there.
Okay. All right. And your mom, now I have this question. What was her love like, how did she find out about this? Was she like in the books or something? Like was she like how was her connection to horses?
I don't have a great answer for that. I think a lot of people talk about being bit by the horse bug, like, it's just something that kinda grabs you, and you have, like, a deep connection that you can't really explain. That's
Mhm.
the best I could, like, try to put words to my mom's relationship with horses is just kinda, like, innate and, just kind of part of her being. Although, like I said, it wasn't something she really got to like, live into when she was growing up. She had this, really deep passion and love for horses, but it wasn't really available for her because her family didn't really support it. Um, and so in a lot of ways, I took it for granted because it was just the world that I was immersed in. At that point when I was growing up, she had her own horse, was taking lessons, was competing. I remember being at the barn. There's some like really old pictures of me, like as a little kid, like brushing a horse.
Mm.
Um, so it's just something I was always exposed to, and yeah, didn't really have any context for how incredibly privileged, these opportunities were just, like, given to me, because it's just what we did as a family.
And the other side of this is horses are huge. Like that's immediately what I think of every time I've seen a horse. Like, you see it in like a movie or something, and the thought process of that, a cartoon, BoJack Horseman or something like. But they're not, they're horses are huge. Like that's immediately in the care for the a horse and what the farms are. The spaces and places where I really remember more so would be like the track, the horse track that used to
Mm.
be over here, Ladbroke. And even then, it's like, wow, this is huge, and I have no idea what that form of horsing becomes. But uh, you're a kid and you think of a animal so large, I immediately would imagine just the fear of like how, the comforts of that. How did you get to a point where it was like, okay, this is something that I'm comfortable riding, carrying, petting, this ain't Mr. Ed. That's okay. That's a very old reference for anybody that's young. But back in when TV was starting, it was a TV show with the horse that talked. called Mr. Ed. So yeah.
As I understand it, they used peanut butter, and that's what made his lips move and kinda look like he was talking, but maybe that's a myth. Um, the I think what really helps in anything, and horses are a good example of this, is if you see people that you know, that you trust, that you look up to, and they're doing something, like, it just feels
More natural.
natural. Yeah, so that's what I remember about horses, like, you know, I remember getting stepped on or, I've been kicked by horses, I've fallen off more times than I can count,
Ooh.
but when you're around people that, like, that's happened to them, like,
Mhm.
I know, like, you kinda get mentally prepared, like, the old saying, like, "You when you fall off the horse, you get back on," like, that's what we did,
Okay.
and when you have people around you that are encouraging and, like, reinforcing those, like, commitment, it's not yeah, I don't have memories of, like it's just always something we're excited to go to the barn to see the horse, to feed him carrots, um, and if something bad happened, you'd, like, bounce back from it, and I think that speaks to, like, being a part of a community that, is all there for the right reasons and ultimately, like, is there to support you.
All right, and then at this age, having a horse, like, what was the relationship with the caretaker for the horse and the barns that would stay there? As I often have this discussion about any form of what we consider luxury items. A luxury item is usually cared for by someone else, whether that be a yacht or a horse or an island or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So even though I don't even know who we think of as like it's Rihanna's island, but whoever the people that care for the island, it's kind of more their island in certain ways. What's the relationship for that you had with even the people that care for the horses, and what type of economy existed in that town? Did it like consciously hit you as a kid, or was it just one of those things where, okay, this is a my horse and it's cared for by this family and this barn, and we kind of come up here and like, what was that like?
So when you board a horse, your main relationship is with the person that owns the barn, like, you're
Mhm.
paying them, board, like, rent, um and then they pay people who are doing, like, cleaning out the stalls or feeding the horses or, horses go out and eat grass during the day in, pastures, and so you gotta, like, take them out of their stall, put them in the pasture, let them eat grass, and then bring them back in. It's a lot of work,
Mhm.
especially picture, like, Michigan winters, New York has pretty cold winters too, like, especially in the wintertime. These are really rough physical jobs, um and so, primarily in the horse industry, those are not like those are low paid,
Mm.
undesirable jobs that are mostly filled by immigrants, and so that's a big reality.
And I would imagine that the immigrant or migrant worker that's working with that and caretaking, they're having this close relationship. Like they have to have love for horses as well. Cause even
Love
though
and a
it's
lot of skill. Those are some of the most talented, like, knowledgeable horse people.
Mm,
If you grew up with horses or you've been in this industry, like, you're able to make, like, important calls about, like, this horse is, like, you can tell is having a rough day. Like, we need to, like, be extra careful in taking him, like, from the stall to the pasture because, otherwise he's gonna get loose and he's gonna hurt himself. Like, making those kinds of judgment calls about their food, like, I think he's gaining too much weight and we need to cut back on certain food. Like, those are the people that are literally, like, on the ground, with the closest relationship, like me as a rider that's like a high school student or something. Like, I'm not with the horse in that kind of, like, intimate relationship, hours and hours out of every day. So that's real.
and that's often what I think about a lot of the concepts of luxuries are still take communities to share with even any of these luxuries to exist.
That's right.
You know, if I buy like everyone that wants a private jet now, technically you have a private jet, but whoever the pilot is, if you're not going to hire your own staff and say like, look, you're going to be the pilot and you're going to be the navigator. I don't know
Oh,
anything
well, all
about
the
a
way
jet.
down to, like, the mechanic, like, who's
Yeah.
making sure that plane is ready to fly. Like, it's more than just showing up and boarding and taking
Mm.
off.
I'm imagining that, yeah, the pilot has a lot of say, so even though it's quote unquote on paper you own, but it's definitely a shared community resource because without those people, I mean, you can have the plane and
You're not going anywhere.
exactly. And I'd imagine the horse and many other items become that too. So this time in high school, as you're going north, a lot of your friends are going into the city. What was like what were your friends saying that like it's like, yeah, I'm about to go horseback riding? And like what was that relationship like? How did you get so much into, you know what I'm saying? Like, did you watch I'm thinking they're watching Tombstone too many times, something?
I don't know, Tombstone. Um, um, yeah, I high school was a weird time for me because I kinda lived in these 2 different worlds. Like, at school, like, people that I was, like, not necessarily close with, but, like,
Your
friendly
social
with.
circle there.
Yeah, and then, like, completely different with, like, the horse world.
Community.
Yeah, and so, I don't know, the horses were, like, a really important grounding force for me, like, that was something I could really count on, for pretty much all of high school. I had, 1, like, horse that was, like, a really important, like, partner in my life. We traveled, like, to competitions and did well at some, did really bad at others.
Mm.
Like, we went through a lot together. The horse's name was Rush,
Mm.
because he liked to go fast
Okay.
and, is a off the track thoroughbred.
Mm.
Um, yeah, uh, went through a lot of ups and downs, injuries, that he was going through and times that I fell off and injured myself. Um, yeah, it's just a lot of, um, say formative experiences that at the time I didn't have any kind of reference. Like, there was nobody in my life who was helping put in perspective, like, you're going through these things, we're doing these things with horses, and this is what we can take away. Like, these are the lessons that you're going through that are gonna serve you well for the rest of your life. I didn't have that kind of, like, articulation. But looking back, and especially in the work that we do today with Detroit Horsepower, it is crystal clear that all of those experiences with horses were building up a sense of self and skills within me that are lifelong. Like, nobody can take those away.
Mm.
And what that looks like for Detroit Horsepower is really crystallized down into the 5 traits that we focus on learning from horses.
Wow. Okay. So now I see that. So really, your horse would be that relationship that many people have with the pet, but it goes beyond that because it's in competition and you're learning together, and in a lot of ways growing together too. And that relationship, as you talk about with Resh, and going fast, and you say he's going fast, I assume you would want to go fast too. Like,
I
yeah.
did, but not as fast as he wanted to go, to be
Okay. All
perfectly
right.
honest.
All right. So, so now I guess the competitions, you're embracing this. As you age out of high school, do you carry this over into college?
I tried. My first year of college, I tried to balance both. We had some kinda unfinished competitive goals. Basically, the winter of my senior year of high school, I'd always gotten good grades, and my high school was, like, willing to be flexible with me. Like, "You've submitted all your college applications, like, you're gonna be okay." What a lot of horse people do, and this was really the first time I had done this seriously, that in the wintertime you actually move south because the weather's better and there are competitions going on in the wintertime that you can actually, like, add to your calendar of competitions that you're doing. So I spent a lot of the winter of my senior year of high school in Ocala, Florida. Ocala is north of Orlando.
I was gonna ask where, and then also the transportation of the horse. I'm guessing that's definitely by car. Well,
Yeah,
by
big
well,
big horse
go ahead.
trailer.
Mhm.
Yeah, depending on how many horses you're moving. They make some really big ones where you can take, like, 10 horses at a time, which is pretty crazy.
So within that travel, being in Florida and in these competitions, are the other people in these competitions like your age? Is this like close in age? Like who else is in this?
Uh It's a good question. This is a world that I haven't really been plugged into for a while, because where this story gets to your actual question about, like, trying to balance in college,
Mhm,
which I can definitely share more if that's helpful,
mhm,
um, ultimately, like, took a step back from that competitive riding world after my freshman year of college.
mhm.
In terms of who I mean, horse sports are interesting, like, it's one of the few spaces where men and women compete against each other. There's no, like, age uh,
Delineation.
yeah, so, like, I could be in a competition against, like, seasoned professionals that have been in this industry for 40 years, and this is also a good example of how, like, in a lot of sports, like, you're past your prime at, like, 35, like, you're over the hill. Horse sports, you just get better with age. Like,
Mm.
the knowledge and the strategy and the approach and the relationships you've had with so many horses over the years is a huge part of what success looks like. I mean, the sport that I used to do, it's called three-day eventing. It's actually in the Olympics. If you look at who goes to the Olympics every 4 years, it's usually, like, very seasoned, um, yeah, experienced professionals that have been putting in the work for a long, long time.
So it's not like a AAU circuit of like
Now there's no,
of
like
this. It's everybody, whoever's in is in, and I imagine it looks a lot like that. That video when Shaquille O'Neal was playing his kids when they were real young, and he was like blocking every shot because if the person comes in that's been riding for 50 years, it's like, man, I'm about to murder this 3-day competition.
that's right. I mean, sometimes it's a partnership. Like, this is literally a team sport. It's you and your horse,
Hmm.
and so it could be that, Boyd Martin, who's the Olympic rider who I actually got to work for in the summer between my freshman year of college before I went into sophomore year, he might be riding, like, a young horse that is, like,
Mm.
coming up the levels, and he's trying to give that horse experience, and so, like, this guy who's been to the Olympics is riding in the same level as me, which is definitely not I never did anything close to the Olympic level, but he's trying to, like, get this horse more experience so I could be competing against somebody like that.
Okay. All right. Now I just had this question on sports because I love sports.
Yeah.
Is so to be good at this, could you be if I'm a because it is a team sport. If I'm a okay rider but got an amazing horse, or if I'm an amazing rider but I got an okay horse, what's a better position to be in?
Uh, yeah, it's a really good question. I think that in the in the sport that I used to do, this 3-day eventing, which is basically a horse triathlon.
Mhm.
You do dressage, which is the fancy horse dancing.
So that's
Uh,
like when they turn around and all of that. Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like if you've seen figure skating where everybody's doing, like, a routine and there's a judge giving you a score on each movement that you do, and then the score gets kinda totaled up and you get a final score. Um, like doing that on a horse, that's dressage.
Mhm.
Then you do cross country, which is like galloping through open fields and you jump things that don't fall down, like picnic tables or hedges or
Mm.
water. That's the thrill. That's where Rush was actually, like, kinda out of control, and we, like, worked a lot on, like, how to make that not, like,
I'm guessing you.
dangerous.
I'm guessing you fell off a couple times on that one too.
Yeah, yeah, 2 concussions, but,
Whoa.
it's alright. I mean, this sport has improved a lot, but had especially at the time that I was competing, which is 2008, 2009 when I was in Florida and working for the
Mhm.
Olympic rider, there was a big problem in the sport with something called rotational falls. Basically, the jumps don't fall down, and so if the horse doesn't clear it all the way, it'll clip the front of the jump with its hooves, and then the momentum will force the horse to rotate, and it lands on top of the rider, and several riders, paralyzed or
Wow.
traumatic brain injury
Mm.
have died, horses have died.
Mm.
Um, they've changed, trying to improve a technology basically with pins that if you hit that jump, the jump will kinda, like, collapse on itself and so that the horse won't rotate. Um,
Mhm.
it's inside baseball on three-day eventing,
Mm.
which, cross country is the second part and stadium jumping is the last part just to, like, close this loop. That's when you're in a arena and you're jumping over jumps that fall down. If you knock them down, you get penalty points if you knock them
Okay.
down.
All right. As you say, I mean, really, any of us that create sports, it's
Mhm.
always
It's a whole
interesting.
'nother world, and you asked a question about better to be like, in this sport, I think you really need to be an experienced rider, like, trying to bring up a less experienced horse, because you need to know what to do in certain situations. But it's real, like, there are, like, it's a thing people do, like, if you're trying to, like, do well and you have a lot of money, you can buy a really nice horse and you can get yourself to, like, that level. Whether you're gonna win against the top people, I can't say, but, like, you can kinda buy into, like, those upper levels of competition that way. That
Mm,
happens.
okay. All right. So in balancing this, I can only imagine it's overwhelming because it's a whole industry world going on that's there and you're in school.
Yeah, I mean, my in the senior year of high school, they kinda let me, do my own thing. They'd send me assignments and I'd get them done, but I was,
Dartmouth had another plan.
yeah, trying to balance both freshman year of college, like, that first term really kicked my ass and, like, had to up my game to be ready for college level work, and then I didn't, have a horse up there that first fall. Brought a horse up in the wintertime and was working at the barn across the river. Dartmouth is right on the border between New Hampshire and Vermont, so the horse was on the Vermont side. Um, and yeah, it's really cold in New Hampshire in the wintertime, so, like, waking up super early to muck stalls and try to pay off the board, or lessons that I was taking and balance schoolwork. Like, my grades got better, but I wasn't having fun, like, I wasn't really, like, getting the college experience. Um, Spring was better, honestly, just because the weather was better,
Mhm.
and we had some unfinished goals. Basically, the end of the senior year of high school story is that my horse got injured, and we didn't get to do the big competition we had been kinda, like, training for. So we got to do that in the spring of my freshman year of college. Actually got to go to Montreal, which horses can have passports, which is pretty crazy 'cause they
Mm.
travel across the border. That went well, and I worked for this rider who's been to, the Olympics and got to do more competitions, and at the end of that, we had kinda done the things that I had set out to do, and it was a really healthy move for me as, as a person and, like, to make the most of this experience in college, to take a step back from competitive riding. So I didn't really ride at all after my freshman year of college, and I think that was a really healthy decision for me.
Oh, what happened to Rush?
Rush went back to my parents who ultimately, had to find a new, like, job for him. They sold him to actually a little kid
Hmm.
who, he was able to, like, take her up some of those, like, early levels, which, is kinda ironic because he was like a nutcase with me, like, literally, like, had to hold on for dear life, and apparently, like, this little kid in him and, like, really, like, I don't know, it was, like, a less stressful job, and they
Mhm.
just, like, jumped around and, like, yeah, had a really happy life.
Cool. All right. So Dartmouth, Ivy, what was that experience like? What drew you there? What were you taking? Why did you choose there?
Yeah, I didn't know where I wanted to go to college. I applied to 14 different schools. I remember visiting, the campus and liking it, but there wasn't, like, an immediate, like, spark. When you get admitted, I was able to go to the admitted students day in the spring, which they say is, like, the weather is always perfect for whatever day they choose. It's, like, the place
Eh,
at its best.
Let me say this as a marketing person. You better pick that day.
Yeah.
My bad.
Oh, it's, they do it well. Um, in that, rather than, like, going on a college tour, like, with your parents or, getting the, like, admissions office view, like, actually living in the dorms and, spending time with actual students, like, that just felt right, and it was a really great decision. I loved being there for 4 years, especially the 3 years after, like, I was all in on just being there and making the most of that opportunity. Um I studied government, which is like their, way of saying political science.
Mhm.
Um, I I was really into, like, social studies, history in high school, and so that kind of, like, led me to wanna continue to, like, deepen in that. International relations was a big thing that I was interested in. I did a study abroad in Morocco,
Wow.
amazing.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, there was a side of, like, politics and government that was really interesting to me. I did an internship in Washington, DC for a think tank.
Mm,
There's like a It's like a proximity to power that is, like, really alluring. That was, like, younger me was, like, really interested in, like, "Oh, this," it's kinda like the room where it happens kind of feeling. Like, I got to go to Capitol Hill, and I think what I was doing there is I was actually, like, picking up the luggage for a former senator and a former White House chief of staff, and I had to bring it to them at
mm.
the Capitol Hill. Like, these were, like, cool things for college-age me to be, adjacent to. And along the way, like, I knew that was pulling me towards, like, something that was very cerebral, very, like, policy oriented, like, very 30,000 feet above where the action is actually happening. And I think, to be perfectly honest, like, that's there's a lot of pull in that direction for me. And I got some really good at well, this was something I wanna say before that. I think the other piece that was happening for me is a spark, a class I took when I was a sophomore in college around the impact of education. Um, in this case, like, the spark for me is, like, from, like a cost benefit analysis. It was a policy class. We're looking at different policy areas, and we got to education policy, and it's like, oh, well, this one's an easy one. The research is super clear that if you make early investments in a young person's life, the benefits, far outweigh the cost, like 20 times more. And you're going to see that for the rest of a young person's life. And I'm like, oh, well, like, duh. This is this is absolutely
Logical.
like, yeah,
Like, we
like
didn't need a think tank for this one, but,
no, the logical me was like,
mhm.
well, this is something that, if I wanna leave the world a better place, like, why shouldn't I put my energy into education? So I was taking education classes at the same time. I did some student teaching in schools in the Upper Valley of New Hampshire, which is kind of the area that Dartmouth's in. Um, Between my junior and my senior year, I, did an internship in Ghana. It's
Mm.
kind of the, like, balance of the international relations side of my interests, and I was teaching in a school. More so I was tutoring. Um, and so in that, like, weighing of, I guess, these 2 strands, like, do I wanna work on, like, a global scale, or do I wanna be, like, at home in the US? Do I wanna be at, like, a policy scale, like this 30,000 feet, or do I actually wanna be, like, on the front lines, like, where the action is happening? And so that was all kinda stewing with me, and I got some really good advice from I don't actually know how I know that. It's like somebody that my grandfather, who's no longer with us,
Rest in peace.
knew. Um Knew maybe, like, his family, and I don't know the t sorry, it's a bad story. But he was basically like, "Get out," like, and he worked in government. It was basically like, "Don't go this way. You're gonna be, like, up against a system that is inefficient, that doesn't get stuff done. You're gonna never, like, actually learn about the solutions that you care about. Like, go do something that's gonna put you in a place where, like, you're out of your comfort zone, and you're actually connecting with people that know the real solutions on the ground, and, you can, partner together to make real change happen on the ground."
That's very interesting. Shout out to those words of wisdom, and that is a decision as
That's a
many
pivotal
people
point for me.
make always. It's like, my work with solidarity always. Pragmatic, meaning like hands-on, boots on the ground, policy, and the relationship between both. Just had an interview with Angelique Power of Skillman, speaking about ways that the policy do need to change, but also the boots on the ground must be empowered. So it's a dual relationship, and I do think that it's really more so based on the person's perspective. The toughest thing I would say in reference to that for me as an entrepreneur, but doing so much community work, um, I would hope that more people make that decision between if you're doing this for more self-interest and affluence, get in the private sector. I think there are a lot of people in government in the public sector that should be in the private sector, or people in the private sector that are looking to contract with government in the public sector that should just stay over there.
That's right.
That's one of my largest thoughts that continues to become more prevalent. The tough thing is I don't know if these people want the competition of the private sector, but that's where you should be because here you must really love the people, which kind of brings me to two questions. You're in Ghana. I'm guessing you were in a car.
Yeah, I was in a suburb of Accra called Tema, which is,
Okay.
like, just outside Accra.
And then when you talk about Morocco,
Mm.
were you there during the time of United States intervening with the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya? Because
Oh, before that. No, this is,
this is before that. Okay.
2009,
Mm,
2000 must maybe 2010,
mhm,
before the Arab Spring uprising.
mm. Okay. So as you're in Morocco and people understanding that the Mediterranean of Africa and what that feels like. I think a lot of people think of the movie, but what was the feel like there at that time as things even more so and Ghana. You're in two places in Africa that
Yeah.
continue to become more and more and more affluent, still dealing with many struggles similar to most of the world, but definitely growing. What was your perspective being there in Africa?
I mean, Morocco and Ghana, I haven't been back since either of those opportunities when I was in college, but those are incredibly beautiful countries with such welcoming people. Um, the culture is incredible. So between the architecture in Morocco, the food. I was living in a homestay, so with a Moroccan family, we were studying colloquial Moroccan Arabic called Darija, as part of our, like, coursework. That was one of the classes we were taking. Um, and so it was in a city called Fez. Fez is kind of central Morocco. It's kind of the cultural capital.
Mhm.
And one of my I would just, like, go on walks through the old city, the Medina, um, and it's very easy to get lost, like, narrow streets that don't really have signs and just explore. And one of my, like, at the end of this I was there for less than 3 months, but by the end, I could navigate myself from one end of the Medina to the other, which is, like, really big city,
This is
walking
this is
across.
before Google Maps.
Yeah, this is definitely not using Google Maps, and I don't think Google Maps would have helped me very much. Um, yeah, just, like, immersing myself in Fez, and then we took trips to Marrakech, which I remember being kinda like Disney World for Morocco,
Mm,
very kinda touristy and commercialized, but from there, went out into the Sahara. We took a camel ride and slept in tents in the desert and, did Casablanca, which feels very, like, European. Didn't go to Rabat, but that's what I've heard about that. There's a city called Essaouira, which is on the Mediterranean. It's just gorgeous, like, bright blue water, with cliffs that go straight down to the ocean, and, yeah, a great transit system. You can actually get cheap flights from cities in Morocco and go to Europe, so they get a lot of tourists coming that way. Yeah, it's, incredible country. Would love to go back and feel the same way about Ghana. Was living on the campus where the school was. The principal was, like, my host. We'd eat together. Really delicious stews, like beef stew with rice, just like
peanut stew, I'm guessing
yeah.
you had to go for that.
Oh, it was amazing.
Mhm,
Did some opportunities to travel. Um, we went to Cape Coast.
hmm,
It's, like, further west. That's the, slave castle, like, point of no return for so many people of African descent.
mhm,
Um, and up to the, like, it's not in the north, but like north of Accra is a city called Kumasi, which has an incredibly vibrant market. Again, like feel of that Medina in Fez, where you can just like wander and get lost like really easily. I didn't have enough time to really explore Kumasi. Um, but yeah, I mean, in that case, I was like in a school environment, tutoring younger kids, pretty young. I feel like first grade was my like assignment. And, the education system in Ghana didn't really resonate with me. It's very based on, like, rote memorization. What most of the teachers would do is, like, write the lesson on the chalkboard, and the students would all sit there and write down what the teacher was writing on the board, and then it would get erased, and then you go on to the next page, and the teacher would keep writing. And, like, you know, I would try to bring more, like, fun and engagement into what I could do to supplement what the teachers were doing, but, like, I don't really have power. I'm a white
Yeah.
kid from the US trying to do what is asked of me in
Mm.
this system. Um, and there's real challenges, like, if it rained, which it does a lot in Ghana, the kids wouldn't come to school because the roads would flood and, you didn't have, like, real infrastructure
Transit
to
system.
get there.
Mhm.
Or if kids' uniforms were dirty, like, they wouldn't come to school because they, wouldn't come in dirty clothes, and they didn't have another option. And so, I mean, these are big problems in Ghana, and they certainly resonate with real barriers for Detroiters in terms of like inadequate transit system or the kinds of resources that kids have at home to meet their basic needs. And so they're like seeds of, these are real challenges in a place like Ghana. And if I'm really committed to making an impact in young people's lives, like why not contribute to success of kids growing up in the US?
I love you uplift that. Definitely the layers of it. I also want to give a couple historical facts for folks that are here as you talk about Fez. That just naturally goes to Morocco. So the Moorish people,
Mm,
which are Islamic in faith, that it's a cool PBS did it a couple years ago, but it's on you can find it on YouTube, but it talks about when the Moors ruled Europe and that Moorish influence of algebra, architecture,
right.
plumbing systems, like Spain, Italy, a lot of it is there. So you also talk about Fez, hence the hat. Like we always say, people wearing the Fez. So the Fez hat, and there's a lot of brothers that wear Fez hats. So you'll see them throughout the Moorish people here. I mean, it's common to see that, but you can kind of tie those origins because that's in our communities too, as the Moorish temples here that exist, and people are like, okay, where's this coming from? It does have roots that go back, and you think of Hannibal and the African generals, and so much is all there. It's there in front of us. We don't look at it and think of it that way, but it's right there. So you were in that mix. So now I guess Teach for America. How do you end up saying Teach for America?
Teach for America has has a lot of challenges, especially in the model that they were using in that 2012 when I graduated college and joined Teach for America. I mean, it uh, when you really think about what they were doing at the time, which is recruiting kids fresh out of college who don't have a teaching background, so least experienced teachers you could possibly imagine. They give you 5 weeks of institute training, kind of teacher boot camp, which was really hard. Um, did not go that well for me, maybe foreshadowing, but, totally inadequate to then, like, show up and you are the teacher, just like any other teacher, having your first year in the classroom and trying to meet the needs of students that are generally, you know, have the greatest needs, whether that's their life outside of school, or that's their current, like, academic, skills that they're bringing into the classroom. Like, you're gonna put your least experienced teachers in front of the students that, have the most growth ahead of them. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Plus, that what I am grateful for is that Teach for America was, like, my direct route from this, like, ivory tower, policy-minded, 30,000 feet world that had totally been my life, you know, on top of, like, having grown up in a privileged bubble with, you know, horses and all of the
Yeah.
things we were talking about before, and can, like, straight shot, like, get out of that layer straight to where, the work is happening. So I'm grateful for that, and that's the reason that I'm in Detroit is they, like, assigned me to Detroit, and I'm so lucky that fate brought me here because 'cause I've lived in the city ever since 2012.
So now I got to give other layers and context like I always do. People say, you talk so much during interviews. I just want y'all to follow this. It be in my mind. So, first off, public education itself, as I always say, even as we have a current executive administration of our nation that talks about slashing the whole Department of Education, which it was a public good really supported and uplifted through a Carter administration. So, but the concept of public education, because education was most historically for very affluent people. Public education starts because we have a population of agrarian workers, meaning a farm-based population, that now needs to become industrial workers. Hence, a lot of the schools you see are designed and built a lot like factories, the bells, the feel, like preparing people, because you had so many people that were used to being in masters in farming and gardening and growing, and now you need to shift this population of people to be in steel mills. And this is like pre-OSHA. So I mean, people were like dying in coal mines and all that stuff all the time. So you need to be able to instruct them in a way. They need to be assimilated in a cultured a way. And that is why the Andrew Carnegies and many barons of those days are very invested in models of public education. Actually, going to a black man, Booker T. Washington, and the work of Tuskegee to train so many people throughout the South. A lot of white folks even itself from those models, because especially like you're looking at a white South that whole structure is built off of enslaving black people, you have to they need to learn. And the best institution for that was Tuskegee, and a lot of methods and mythology from that, and those relationships between Henry Ford and Tuskegee, hence Henry Ford's relationship with George Washington Carver, designing the plant like a plant, because these are designs from George Washington Carver. Like, all of these relationships are really about shifting a class of people to become workers. So I like to frame education from the lens like that. Now, the way it's sold, and this is the term that I love using, propaganda is like, we care about you, so we want to educate you. It was more like, you got to be productive. You got to get educated. That's first thing. Central High School, like America's first public high school. Shout out
That's
to the
right.
Trailblazers. My mama, even though a Northwestern guy. So even the design of Central, it looks like the factories of the day.
It's a beautiful building.
Yeah, but when from the outside, if you look at an old factory that was built when Central was made,
Yeah.
very similar.
Mhm.
So that's the design of it in the beginning. And the investment since then in what you do with public education has become something that the public has responded to in many different ways, especially right now is heightening a lot of discussions. Detroit and Teach for America have such a direct relationship when we look at so many of the iterations that I've brought up before about what's happened to the Detroit school district here. And it deals a lot with the institution of racism and the three things that I always say, extractive, predatory, and destructive. So you have a school board here in the city of Detroit that in the 90s supports a $1 billion bond, which is worth so much more money. And this is running concurrent under an administration of David Snead, running concurrent with the African-centered education that becomes prevalent and the basis and grounds for all education in Detroit public schools because of the work of Kwame Kenyatta and many others that organized for years to have this transition. And Check the Archives of Detroit is Different, that Kwame Kenyatta interview. And during that interview, he uplifts just the amount of money when Detroit had the fourth largest school district in America, that all of the publishing houses and places to make test scores now are not paying, not paying for Shakespeare novels anymore. They're paying Maya Angelou and Alice Walker and Sonia Sanchez and James Baldwin. They're finding and creating text for hundreds of thousands of students that we're abundantly connected to. And now you have this school system that has been bonded and supported and voted for by Detroiters to get $1 billion to it. Nah, nah, nah. The standards of these schools are so bad. So now you implement emergency management, and it's been such a broken system since. Teach for America comes in inside of the chaos of this, and many of the teachers, and gets mixed reviews, because the reviews I got from some administrators was some of the teachers here for Teach for America don't know what the hell they're doing. But even in the not knowing what the hell they're doing, they're committed to being in the space. Um, some of the structure that many of the elder teachers have witnessed most of their life just deconstruct has drawn out and grew so much apathy in them. Um, and that battle, and so many of those master teachers not receiving any raises,
Absolutely.
the horrors they faced in emergency management. This is running concurrent where there was still questions about charter school systems existing. And so many, as Angelica uplifted in our interview, is so many school districts throughout Michigan, because to charter, people were like, let's just make our own school district,
It's
and
the Wild West.
how stuff happens. And now it's to a point where the challenge of what education is, what schooling is, is so commonplace for a kid to, be, start school at a charter school, and then 2 months in, go to a public school, then 2 months after that, go to an online school, and then after that, go to homeschool, and then next year, end up at another school. Like, this is just so common, the shifts of what's happened, especially post-COVID. So I look at that time for Teach for America being more present, it was supplementing challenges that already existed in a structure of systems that have been extracted from,
Right.
predicated on, and deconstructed in so many ways. Like, even when you talk about Burns,
Mhm.
because I'm familiar with Burns, but many of these schools from, 10 years ago are now shadows of themselves, don't exist anymore. I interviewed a young lady the other day, and she's 23, and she gave 4 of the schools that she went to at 23 now, no longer around.
That's right.
So you talk about also what schools meant to communities as spaces to rally communities, to, have forums to engage with communities. And during this time, it's been more of a separation between school and community as well. All of these are challenges for societies and communities themselves, but hence, when it's society and it's community, that impacts us. That impacts us as people. So I like to give that overview. And you're walking into a city that, as you talked about, affluence and traveling the world and equestrian farms. You're coming into the city that, as we know, blackest city in America. Race is such a dynamic here, but poverty is so prevalent, which both of those things run concurrent as well. If, hence, even, the one way that redlining still exists is they'll say, what type of school system is over there? If it's a bad school system, basically what they're telling you is it ain't a lot of white people over here. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's these same prevalent thoughts, and it's a lot of poverty over here running concurrent. And you jump right into the thick of this with the mind for social studies and history and traveling the world. And I'm guessing maybe those first years, you just learning from the kids in a lot of ways, or just so much of society because it's such a different story.
Yeah, it was trial by fire for sure, and it's honestly a little bit worse than, like, one layer that is definitely in the mix of what you described of deconstructing the system, is literally where I was hired. Um, Burns is right now it's a DPSCD school, public schools, and it was. But the time that I was working there, it was taken from DPS into the EAA,
AA system.
Educational Achievement of Authority of Michigan, when the state thought that they could take the 10 schools that they were gonna turn around. They had the answers from Lansing with, somebody that they brought in from Kansas City.
Back to that 30,000-foot view of how to solve challenges that are so personalized and so nuanced.
Well, and yeah, I remember on day 3 of professional development, like, I've never been a teacher, like, we are I'd been through Teach for America's training, and we're here with professional development with the EAA, and they were, like, very proud to show us this, old commercial. I think it was from FedEx, maybe, I might have that wrong, but it was basically a commercial about, like, we're building the plane while we fly it, and they were like, "We're doing this, like, this is us, we're building the plane as we fly it," and we were like, "Oh, this is going down." Planes that take off without being fully built, they crash,
Mhm.
and that's what happened with the EAA, so.
Definitely. And this is also like when we talk about like racial dynamics that still exist in Detroit, because that's also something that our current mayor was so connected to. That's a leadership of Mike Duggan. We're looking at other institutions being involved in that. And when you say that leadership and people, it's not necessarily, I think, to characterize and look at and point fingers at people. It's more so, I think, the lack of understanding from the root up, because that's always been more of my critique of schools. Listen to the teachers a whole lot more. I don't feel that teachers are empowered as they should be, because they're back to, like you say, in the front lines. The teachers have way more of an understanding, and it's nothing like, as I often tell people, what you remember from school. Like the way that the standards are and the pacing charts, and even with the IEPs, meaning like students that have as they would be labeled behavioral or mental
Or a learning disability,
challenges
yep.
and things like that. Like all of that, if you empower the teacher and the instructor more, I believe the school functions better. But it's systems in place where basically almost it's built where, if David's teaching in East LA and I'm teaching right here in Detroit, we're supposed to be on the same page of the same book, doing the same lesson, the same way. So it's like, am I a person or am I a machine? Right. And this is not just a Detroit thing, because even in a city like New Orleans that chartered this whole school system after Katrina, like these challenges exist throughout the nation. And even more of that lens, it's definitely going to be the lab testing takes place in Black communities, impoverished communities.
Literally. We were guinea pigs for an education software that they were piloting. He said, "These people are good people." I'm not if you really look into the EAA, like, I think there's documentation around, like, actual corruption
Oh,
of.
I'm not saying good. I'm
Yeah.
saying I'm not pointing my finger at them and their character per se. And it's
You might.
definitely a lot of stuff too. It's a lot of stuff that definitely was gutted, but it's hard because so much of the institutions of most things in America are so extractive,
That's true.
destructive, and predatory. So like it's like, I got an interview with a police officer coming up soon, and even that institution. So it's back to like, if you're in the mob, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're gonna get some, you know what I'm saying? To be in the mob, you're gonna get some blood on you. So definitely, the number one thing goes back to really the root of like what I say. If you want to do this for self, get in the private industry.
Mhm.
You know, uh, get over there. Don't be in this space,
Yeah.
because the minute that you get in this space, the minute that you're doing things without the selflessness and presence of mind of community and people, Everything's wrong, actually.
Mm. It didn't work in this case, especially when, I'm a first-year teacher. This is 2012, and they had 52 fifth graders in my one class for, like,
Yeah.
brand new
So
teacher. This is, like, the
so
worst way
it's
to
like
start off,
what
so
and the support they offer you is probably more go to this training. It's nothing hands on. It's not interacting with you as a human being. It's basically like, okay, 52, what grade?
fifth graders.
Fifth graders, they cussing and yelling and telling you what they not gonna do. That's basically like different iterations of it. So,
Mhm.
like, I mean, over a whole school year, and you're probably like, "Hey, I need some support." And they're like, "Hey, have you tried this?" You know what I'm saying? And then other counselors are involved, other other consultation support is involved. No one wants to be hands on and deal with people from the human dynamic because the human challenges that exist for those 52 students that are in that class
Yeah,
must be addressed
yeah.
on the human level before we can start thinking about, all right, let's start talking about, I don't know, you said social
You said
studies.
algebra before,
Yeah, let's
yeah.
start talking about algebra. It's
Mhm.
like, God knows what colorful you probably learned a lot of that. What colorful combination of profanity and slang you could put
Yeah.
together of why I'm not gonna do this lesson.
Mhm.
That is going to be presented.
That's right.
And this is just a sign of like, wow. So yes, I'm not excusing any of it, but I'm saying it's not, I don't look at it as people per se. It's an institutional failure. It's a structural, it's systemic. Let's be clear. Yes, it is people, but it's a system. Because I think even if you take those people out and put the same another group of people in,
It's true.
it's going to be that unless you start changing the thought process of how to interact. And it must interact with people, not thinking about systems. Think about the people. That's all. It's not that radical. Don't be and work for community if you don't like the people. Love the people
Yep.
in all of the inadequacies as well. That should be the root of all of this. The challenges in social work, all of it. It should be the same. You should go in knowing that, okay, let's look around in this neighborhood. The people are either going to be very angry, very depressed, very disconnected. You should not walk into neighborhoods like mine and think to yourself, what's wrong with them? They don't like that. I'm trying to do this one thing that's real good. Hell no. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're about people, have enough presence of mind. I'm one of the few people that choose to be on my block in my community. So I understand the conditions of the others around me, and I'm grateful for what I have, but I'm not blind. I'm very aware. So that's all. With
Sort of
that,
relationships, absolutely.
yeah. So with that, to horsepower, what was the thought process as you're there and hearing different colorful rants from fifth graders that says, you know what? When I was this age, I'm thinking this is like one of those things. What I had was this relationship with Rush that grounded me.
Yeah, so the resources that I was tapping into as a teacher, Teach for America did have professional development, which was helpful. School, not so much. There were some people in the school environment that would pour into me, like you were saying, like the people that are actually like there, like on the ground, like working with me, working with my students, and building my tools as an educator was really important. I was getting my master's in teaching at night from Oakland University. That
Okay.
coursework was helpful. Um, and it was really tapped in a lot of that brought me back to some of that like spark in college that set me on this like path that education is such a vehicle for opportunity in life. And a lot of that research comes back to character education and social emotional learning.
Mm.
These kinds of internal skills that are linked to success in school and in life. We're talking about skills like
Can you talk about? I want you to break that down. You
yeah.
said character education.
Mhm. So these are also called like non-cognitive skills. So it's like what rather than like thinking about how you can do better in math, like how can you build your perseverance is one of the examples. Like how can you like overcome adversity or like when things get hard, what kind of story do you tell yourself about who you are as a person or like my ability to like solve like grasp this new concept? Like more than just like starting with the skill, like why aren't you learning this like algebra concept? Like what about you as a person? Like how are you approaching this challenge in math? Like building that sense and that like internal toolkit that you're bringing to new challenges. There's a lot of research about how building up those personal skills are actually linked to greater academic success. Like same school environment, same lesson, but if the students are bringing different approach, different tools to the table, ultimately they're going to do better in school and for the rest of their life. Um,
Yeah, I would say back to the falling off the horse and getting back on again. I often challenge people to say, strengthen your critical thinking skills. Um, and that's still taking that step back.
right.
The question I would have for you, especially you were teaching at Burns, is even from an older age, but definitely from a younger age, when you're in conditions that your reality, some perceptual, some actual, has you so close to like what's survival, how do you even step back and begin to build that perseverance where now you can thrive from there,
Mhm.
but don't disengage from everything associated with that? Meaning, like, how do you learn that skill and then say to yourself, okay, but I can still be in my community. I can still associate with my family. I can still have some of these same relationships and bonds.
I mean, I think to flip that a little bit, like, it's not that our kids have, like, a deficit in these skills, but they're not, like, owning them. Like, they are practicing perseverance, just to take that one example, like, on a daily basis. Like, whether it's, uh, you know, you had, uh, not enough, like we had to miss a meal and, like, just had to, like, get through it. Or, the bus didn't show up on time and, like, I had to find a different way to get to school, like, and make it work. Like, those are, like, real world actions that are acting on this skill. And to be able to, like, grasp that, put some language around it, and realize, like, it's a muscle you have to keep working. So, like, I'm gonna apply this to, whatever this problem in school is facing me with. Like, I am capable. Like, I'm awesome. Like, I'm working on getting better and better all the time. And I'm gonna tackle this new problem because I can do this.
Okay, so now I get more of that viewpoint. So it's more so about transitioning already those values and that character that you have and and displaying that you can apply that same skill set to many of these other things in life.
And it's all like, part of it is we're all works in progress. Like, I'm not perfect. Like, I'm working on getting better across all these domains that we focus on with Detroit Horsepower. It's a lifelong process. But
Mhm.
I know, like, I'm resting on, like, a foundation of things that got me to this point, and I'm gonna keep, like, progressing, just like all of our students. And part of what we instill, that I was working on instilling in my classroom culture, when I was, like, literally bringing this language and sense of personal self-reflection and personal growth into what we talked about, like, as a classroom. And ultimately, what I rest on, and the more and more that I shared with my students about, like, the personal experiences that I had to develop these skills,
Mm.
kept bringing me back to my experiences with horses.
Okay, so now I see that. So now I see that it's more so like, okay, this was where I grew. I'm speaking as you, where you grew a whole lot more of those skills of navigating a lot in life. And by having that as the vehicle, so it's less even the horse or the farm, it's more the vehicle to take on that challenge, and from this challenge learn other skill sets that are already in you, and developing more of those skill sets that are in you and of you to apply in different things throughout life.
That's what Detroit Horsepower is about. And, I mean, having those conversations initially, like, didn't really click with my kids at Burns because what kind of reference point do they have for the deep and life-changing opportunities that I knew horses had provided me? Like, that's not something that our kids growing up in the city have a reference point. Like, maybe where I thought you were going with the horses earlier, like, you know, longtime Detroiters might have memories of riding horses on Belle Isle or the
Fort
State
Wayne.
Fair.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
did Fort Wayne have horses?
Fort Wayne, I think at one point in time
Oh,
definitely
yeah?
had horses. From some of these interviews, like years ago, people had that. Yeah, but definitely Belle Isle.
Uh,
I remember years ago, it was a project. A couple brothers were looking to put together an equestrian farm, New Detroit. My dad was doing some accounting with that project, and a lot of that was deconstructed because of political things. That boy, political stuff can be very interesting. But that was a big project, and working with some of the Buffalo Soldiers, and that was mid-90s.
okay. Yeah, but kids growing up today, I mean, this is 2012, 2014 when I was at Burns, like, we've lost that kind of access point where, I just got a call a couple weeks ago from a native Detroiter who lives out of state now, but found out about Detroit Horsepower, and she's an equestrian, where she lives now. Belle Isle is literally where she got her start. She told me she's got the certificate she got from the Belle Isle riding stable pinned on her wall. Now she's, like, a very
Cool.
accomplished horsewoman. And so, we don't have those access points today like, lifelong Detroiters, have in their past, or maybe they are used to visiting family out of state and they got those early exposure to horses, from leaving Detroit. Um, and so I was really motivated to pursue this idea that kids like my students could have these deep and life-changing opportunities with horses in, making it accessible in our community by starting what would become this organization called Detroit Horsepower.
Okay, so that starts, and I see that, and I assume this journey has taken you in many of spaces as well. And knowing that you're looking at it from this lens, I can't even imagine the cost of putting something like this together. I'm thinking tens of millions of dollars. Like if this is Price is Right, equestrian farm, you got to buy the horses, you got to have staffing. You just already talked about the care for the horses alone. Um, I'm thinking this, if this is Price is Right on a low level, you know, maybe maybe about $50 million or something like that, like something ridiculous.
Not
If
that
it's gonna be
crazy.
like a footprint that's large enough where horses can ride everywhere and everything, but like I'm just throwing that out there. What was step one? Let's just start there.
Step one was like, I'm a very one foot in front of the other kind of person. Like, how to get started. Like, this is something I was interested in. Like, I thought there was something here. I left my job as a teacher. We did incorporate Detroit Horsepower as a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. And to get started, I cold called Alternatives for Girls, the nonprofit, because I was interested in whether they'd be interested in sending students, in their programs to this brand new horse camp. Amazingly, they said yes, and they wanted to take a chance on me as this like fledgling organization. And we built relationships with partner horse barns that also took a really big chance and let me and volunteers come out and use their horses and their space to run free summer camps in 2015. We did 2 camps.
Okay, where do you do these camps? How do you transport the horses? Like
Well, the horses are already there because these barns are letting us use
their space. So it's
their
like
horses.
you like are so it's almost like you're paying for a day pass for this group or whatever, or just getting access for what you need.
Luckily, in just about every case, it's an in-kind donation where these barns are willing to donate the use of their space and their horses for us to come in and run Detroit Horsepower's program.
Okay, well, shout out to those. What barns were those?
There's dozens and dozens of barns over these 10 years. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary this year.
Mhm.
The very, very first, if you go all the way back, you mentioned the Buffalo Soldiers, which have horses in Rouge Park on Joy Road. They were the very first barn that ever welcomed us into their space, and that was our very first summer camp. This is in June of 2015, and we had, I think, 8 girls from Alternatives for Girls come to this very first fledgling
Okay.
horse camp.
All right. So with that, you said you didn't ride in a long time.
That's
When
right.
did you start riding again?
Well, I actually don't really ride these days. in part, this is like my life trajectory of becoming, passionate about education and pouring the opportunities that have been given to me and making those available for young people like my students. So, whenever I have the chance to be around horses, like the goal is to create those opportunities for young people. So I generally don't ride these days. I was
Okay.
also in a really bad car accident 6 years ago,
Mm,
which has
mm,
changed my uh it hasn't changed much of my life, but I don't have full use of my left hand
mm,
anymore because of this right brain injury.
mm.
So I will, never be able to do the kind of like high level intense competitive riding that
That you
I
did at one point.
yeah,
But
but I had stopped,
okay.
riding, well before the car accident. So that's not really
Okay,
the
so
concern.
I just don't see, so who's leading the instruction? Is it the do you hire the instructor? Is it the people from the Buffalo Soldiers? I'm talking about this very first iteration.
The very first one, and this is true for basically all our programs, is it's Detroit Horsepower is facilitating everything. Like the barn, kind of shows us around. These are the horses, we're letting you use. This is their equipment, their saddle or their bridle, the things that you use, clean out their, brushing and things like that. Um, and so, I mean, each of the first, I'd say 3 years, like I'm the one running the show with a lot of volunteer support, really awesome
Okay.
people
And
who are
nobody was challenging you to be like, "Psh, you better get up there."
no, I don't think I ever rode as part of, um no, but I mean, I've been around horses pretty much my whole life. Um,
Okay.
there are, like, certain certifications that I've gotten that
Mhm.
show my, like, riding or my horse knowledge abilities that, like, you kinda, like, use that as a credential when you're talking
Yeah.
with horse people, like, "Oh, I'm a HA," and, it's called Pony Club, which is,
Mhm.
like, the most, embarrassing name, but it is an international accreditation organization.
So it's like having a black belt in horsing.
Yeah, kinda, it's, like, recognized as, like, "Oh, wow, yeah, you're serious."
Okay.
Um,
All right, but I'm just saying more so for the good. I just know kids. They just, like
kids
every time the little homies, they
but
ain't
you have
even
to picture,
kids.
just like you asked earlier, like, you're kinda transported into another world with these really big animals.
Sure.
Like, "Oh, this guy, like, is walking the horse around and, like, put the saddle on." It's like, "Oh, he's okay, like, okay, I guess I'll give this a try."
Okay.
'Cause you need to see I mean, horses, we haven't really got into the, like, evolutionary psychology of horses, like, they really respond to a calm confidence. Like, they're always looking out for potential threats in their environment because 'cause they're, like, prey animals. So, if you're coming up to a horse and you're nervous, you're afraid, you're looking around like what bad thing is about to happen, you're telling the horse, like, "Something scary is around here." They don't realize what you're afraid of is it. Um, and so if you approach a horse like, "Everything's cool, like, we're about to have a great time, we're going this way." Versus like, "Okay, like, you seem trustworthy.
And
I'm follow your lead."
these are some of those transferable skills that you talk
Exactly,
about.
for sure.
Approaching
Those
a lot of stuff in life with a calm confidence will be helpful.
that's right. And all of that work can be really powerful just on the ground, like interacting with a horse, um, let alone getting on top, riding them, controlling their speed and direction, and the sense of like self and empowerment that can, result for a young person. Like, I'm on top of this 1,000-pound animal that could definitely hurt me if it wanted to, but it's listening to me, and I'm telling it to walk forward or stop or go faster. Um, and we're getting along great. Like, what else can I do?
Mm, I like it. So, so 10 years of this, and you're growing momentum every year.
Yeah, because we have a really wide network of partner barns outside the city. The Buffalo Soldiers definitely gave us our start, but the number of people we wanted to bring in, the number of volunteers, the number of outside folks that are kind of part of Detroit Horsepower's network was way more than was a good fit for that space. That's really their clubhouse. They call it their hidden gem. Like, they really like to stay under the radar. And so we had to go farther out to, the second camp we did in 2015 was in Highland, Michigan, really far out. Right now, some of our best partners are in Plymouth, Ann Arbor, and White Lake Township. We drive really far to give our kids access to horses. Detroit Horsepower provides all the transportation, all the, meals, supplies, equipment, everything kids need. We pick up kids at their houses, get everybody on a van, then we start these really long drives. It is a lot, and for sadly, like, little access. We run week-long summer day camps, Monday through Thursday. Pick kids up, drive out, have a day of camp, drive everybody home, do it again the next day. And then we have an after-school program that meets year-round, but kids only generally get to be with horses, like, once a month,
Mm.
because we have classroom-based programming at Marygrove, and then we travel to different partner barns on the weekends. But because of the transportation barriers, we usually move kids in a 15-passenger van, so we can only take, basically up to 14 kids on a trip. And so if we schedule 3 trips in a month, like, our full cohort of 40 kids, really only gets to go one trip a month. So really proud of what we've been doing for 10 years, but it is just a fraction of the long-term goal, which has been to make horses accessible in the city in a space that our students can own and control and really count on. And it's gonna be an absolute game changer once we open this new facility.
All right, so why Hope Village?
Yeah, we were looking at, this is going back to, like, 2016, 2017, a citywide map of possible locations that had enough open space that could be a good fit for horses, that is close to kids, and doesn't have a legacy of environmental contamination. And the most important criteria is, what do community members want? There were some great locations that I was excited about, I thought would be great, had more and more conversations with communities, said, "Nice idea, but not here."
Mhm.
That was really helpful
Yeah.
because we didn't
You
waste
wanna
our
have
time
that
there
fight. You
anymore,
wanna have
and
that fight.
this would never, ever work, if residents weren't interested in adding this to their community. Um, in this case, early stage conversations happened when Focus Hope, like you said, was still invested in community engagement in the Hope Village, um, framework they created. We got introduced to the community strategic framework that Focus Hope facilitated and learned about priorities for the neighborhood, like more green space and more community asset building and opportunities for young people. And that gave us, like, a good sign, like, okay, there's something more to talk about here. And Focus Hope was willing to put us on the agenda for big town hall meetings
Hmm.
where there were, like, more than 100 residents, where I could say, I'm interested in learning what you all think about having horses in Hope Village. And I distinctly remember, like, saying those words, like, barely being able to get that sentence out of my mouth before people were clapping. And I was like, "Oh,
Different
this is we could
and
talk
good.
more about this."
Yeah.
So that led to, like, more conversations at, like, the block club level. We did some pop-up events at Salsinger Playfield over there on Linwood. We brought horses in, had conversations with community members, and then started to get more into, like, feasibility. Like, could this work here? We had residents like Jeff Jones, at those tables, along with other sites we were considering at the time. This was facilitated by the Detroit Collaborative Design Center at University of Detroit Mercy. They've been really, really great partners, and a really key mentor in my ear, and a board member. Actually, Detroit Horsepower's longest standing board member is Sandra Turner Handy, who's worked for a long time at Michigan Environmental Council and is really an expert in community engagement. Has been a huge mentor and guide for me. And so as we got deeper into that process, that's when in 2017 we started approaching Detroit Public Schools. So Dr. Vitti was brand new as superintendent, and we kind of informed him, that Detroit Public Schools, now Detroit Public Schools Community District, owns the former Paul Robeson School site at Linwood and Finkel, which is the site we had been discussing with the neighborhood, and basically sent him a letter and said, there's a lot of educational benefits for kids, like DPSTD students, through partnering with horses. And our goal as an organization is to make this accessible in the city by building a new facility. And he was willing to talk with us. We talked with some people on his new staff. We talked with him directly, and he said, let's pursue this. Took a very long time to actually work through the bureaucracy. That's around the time that the car accident happened, so that delayed things a little bit.
Mm.
But, through that process, we did get an MOU approved by the school board that Detroit Horsepower could reactivate the former Paul Robeson site to build this new center. And through that process, we were also doing conceptual design and partnering with residents and doing community feedback sessions on what would it look like real practically, like what kinds of concerns do we need to be prepared to address? Addressing things like odor, like is this going to stink up the neighborhood? Pests, are there going to be rats attracted to like horse grain? Um, Safety, like are horses going to get loose and like get out onto Linwood and Fenkell? Like these are real concerns that residents rightly brought to the table. And through this collaborative design process, we've been able to really nail down and make sure that this is going to increase quality of life and not cause any kind of a nuisance to the neighbors.
I love it. And definitely during that, I remember hearing about it first from Stephanie and then Jeff's excitement about it and many others, Hope Village residents and part of the Hope Village team. So it was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. I definitely see that. I definitely could see that because to us, still as residents, it's like that space is just sat there and not been used in years.
Right.
As much of an asset as Paul Robeson was to community and for community, it has not been active since. I remember the day of that fire. And also like right now, it's just like the backdrop for the Eagles field. That's kind of what I think about when I think about that area. So to have something over there and then just walking this footprint and seeing those victories, because it's taking time. How have you continued to pace yourself for a project that's taken this much time? Did you have in your mind that it would take 10 years? And when I say a lot of time, I'm speaking really from a reference of your age more so than a reference of just time in general. I think a lot of great projects take, 10, 20, 30 years. Did you prepare yourself for something that would take this amount of time?
The answer is no. Like I mean, I was 24 when I left my job as a teacher and thought this would be like something I obviously really passionate about and wanted to see how far we could go. Um, and 10 years later, like if you ask 24-year-old me, like, how long do you think this will take? It's like not 10 years, but I didn't know. Like there's a fair amount of naivete that like I didn't know how tall the mountain was that I was starting to climb. I just knew I wanted to start climbing.
Mm,
And I have to say, there's a lot of privilege in being able to like start that journey, you know, out of all the horrible things in the EAA, the state run turnaround district, they had a salary incentive. Like I was able to work as a teacher and save money, like build myself a cushion, so that I wasn't stepping out on a limb. And like we talked about before, like I come from a family that could catch me if things didn't work out. Like they'd be there to help get me out of like a bad spot. So there's a huge amount of like entrepreneurship, as you know, involves a huge amount of risk. And to be able to step off that ledge, to try something new and create something different, very aware that like that's a hugely privileged thing that I was able to do.
So that brings me before we close out to the question of what did your friends and family say initially about the concept? Like, what did your parents say first? Because I'm guessing your mom, being an equestrian herself, like, is probably like, I like that, but I don't know what was friends and family's take.
Yeah, they've been very supportive of everything I wanted to do. Like moving to Detroit as a new college grad was not on anybody's bingo card for like my life's journey, but like never said anything to me like that's not, something you should do or like, think twice about that. Like they've always like supported what I thought was the right step for me. That includes, trying this thing called that didn't even have a name at the time.
Mhm.
I mean, at the time I was like working for a general contractor and driving for Uber and working for my sister's company or the company my sister was working for doing like odd jobs. So it was like a very like, maybe there's something here. Like it sounds good, but like, give it a try. Like see how far you can take this. Um, and yeah, I think there were people in my life that I pulled closer that had relevant expertise that I could pull on. Actually, my former horseback riding coach is a founding board member of the organization because she was an important mentor for me and brought a lot of horse knowledge. Friend of mine with a lot of like management Nonprofit experience was another founding board member that could kind of like, help build the like financial infrastructure. I'd never made a budget at that point. I'd never done any of the incorporating administrative steps. So, there's a lot of like figuring stuff out on my own, but surrounding myself with a community that sure knows more than I do, that I could tap for advice and guidance. And that has only, is grown more than I like. If you asked me to name all the mentors in my life right now, we could sit here for hours and try to come up with every single one. Like, it is countless of how many people have been extremely generous with their time and their expertise and poured into me and poured into this organization so that we could get to this point.
And you also talk about just what that meant as a child and now in this growth through adulthood. What is entrepreneurship um, poured into your character thus far, especially through and definitely it's a blessing for your healing through the accident too, but even through something like that and staying commitment, what skills do you believe have been developed in your character in this?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer that with just a quick shout out and answer the question about how we approach that for Detroit Horsepower. So the 5 traits we focus on, spell out the acronym PERCS with a C, PERCS. It stands for perseverance, empathy, responsible risk taking, confidence, and self control. And so to answer that through like a perks lens, that stick to itiveness, like 10 years of, going down this journey and not giving up, has definitely like reinforced that within myself on ways that I never could have imagined when I started this journey. Empathy, I think the empathy that I felt for my students and the relationships that we built with my students and their families was coming in an important grounding point and has really strengthened. I had never had any kind of like management experience. So like building a team, we're at 6 full time right now. And so like being able to make sure that I'm not just solely driven on like my goals and the organization's goals, but like we're in this together and moving forward. So that's one of the biggest ones I'm like trying to be intentional to work on. Working on all of these, but responsible risk taking, launching a multi-million dollar capital campaign. The total cost for building this facility is going to be north of $12 million. So how to like take on that much like risk in the fundraising and like all the responsibilities is really surrounding myself with these experts in community development, building projects who have navigated through the city government systems and permits and all this stuff that I don't know about, but we've got really smart people that have done this for lots of other projects. Where my confidence, yeah, I think this has really like elevated my own belief in like what I'm capable of and what I can do in partnership with others. And self control is really about like pausing and reflecting before acting. And so, yeah, I think we were talking about the frustrations of government or the how hard rejections can hit as grant applications. Like I think I've gotten just like it'll be okay. Like I can take a deep breath and I can pause and I can pivot. Definitely had to test that skill throughout this journey.
Yeah, and similar, and I tip my hat for that journey. Many of the traits that you speak about and how that is, I can I see some of the growth and some of the steps and what I've done here with Detroit is different the
Mm,
same way, but especially when you talk about others, staffing and seeing because it expands. So that's where I do understand more and more because you start providing opportunity and now you're connecting to their families and their communities. So it's like, oof, what moves you make, what moves you don't make, because those risks now impact so much more than you. You may be able to take a hit. You may be able to say, I can skip a bill or two, but that may not necessarily be the same thought process for the team that's coming with you,
mhm.
especially if they believe that the reason that this didn't happen was because of a risk you rolled the dice on that they weren't necessarily in support of. So that discernment, and then also just having that discernment of when you say you trust the smart people, I would say this is definitely talking more than the guest here, and I'm gonna close out here, but I'm hoping that this is talking to somebody out there that can learn from this one. The chip on my shoulder does exist for the reality, but having the discernment of how to maneuver, because it's a lot of smart and brilliant people. But I also love to work with the person that loves the opportunity that's given to them. Because some of the brilliant and experienced folks that look at working with what I'm building and developing with Detroit is different, sometimes can like little bro it in street terms, meaning like look at it like, oh man, this is osh posh bigosh. Whereas that person that you're giving that opportunity for to that hasn't been given that opportunity, but has that presence of mind to pour in, I've seen so much masterfully be done. And I'm speaking from the experience of like, oh, this is the best person. They know everything, but they're not, their presence of mind, their heart, their their support of it is not in this. Now, do I have the luxury of everybody on my team being like that? Hell no, because I'm the person that's committed to this more than anybody. But I can say that over time, I like to always kind of try to keep a balance. And I found associating with those that love that opportunity can re-engage me more and more. And I don't know if you want to feed off of that and say something, but
It's gotta be a balance. I think nobody's gonna care about this more than you do, as a founder. I just wanna be really aware of where my blind spots are, and so much of this journey has been me figuring stuff out and people building my skills, but I hate thinking that I'm reinventing the wheel. Like, if there's a gap in my knowledge and somebody knows this inside and out and can partner with me for the right reasons, like, let's definitely do that and not me, like, spin my wheels and make mistakes that aren't necessary or serving, our bigger goals.
yep. And I feel that. I feel that. So, classic questions. Now we get to the classic questions. But before classic questions, when to camp? Well, I just go to the website when I'm trying to get my equestrian on, and then what ages, how old? What if
Yeah,
I'm
we
a
should
senior and I
definitely.
want to get up there?
So right now our programs are open to middle school and high school, so roughly like 11 to 18 years old,
Hmm.
Detroit residents, with a priority on Hope Village, closest to where the building's gonna be built. Um, in our capacity for 2025 and the next school year, which is 2025-26, is still, like, in the current state of picking kids up and driving to other people's barns, so we don't have as many spots as we'd like. We do about 100 summer camp students in the summer, and then we've got about 40 students through the school year. But there is a form on our website. If you go to detroithorsepower.org and click the contact page, should find a link to put your information in. It says it's for a wait list. Generally, we try to get everybody, I'm crossing my fingers, off the wait list for summer camp. So this is a great time to put your name down if you have a student between 11 to 18 years old. Would love to get them into summer camp this summer at detroithorsepower.org. And when the new barn opens, which is targeted for 2026, so many more kids are going to be able to be a part of this program for summer camps, after school program, field trips, and even more advanced opportunities for the students that have been with us the longest. We cannot wait.
Okay. All right. So classic questions now. Thank you. This has been a fun interview. Very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Yeah, I got my first car when I was a senior in high school, so that's 2007. I think it was pretty recent, like 2004 Honda CR-V
Okay.
was my mom's car, and yeah, it's very helpful to have a way to get to the barn. That's honestly most of where I was going.
I was gonna ask where was the first place you went?
It just I don't remember exactly, but likely to the horse barn, in part, like, just the logistics of getting to and from, horses on a daily basis. I was riding basically 6 days a week, and so it
Wow.
it helped that I could drive myself or I could drive me and my younger sister to the horse barn.
Okay. All right. And next question. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks. Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
It's a terrible question to ask me because I have, like, no music. I'm embarrassed to say, like, you're talking to the least musically inclined guest you've probably ever had. And it's also probably a sad Detroiter question because I've never physically been to the fireworks
Oh,
in
man.
12 years of living here.
Oh, man. It's
Uh,
not like it used to be, but yes.
um, I know this is a classic question, but I'm gonna struggle here, Kari.
You gotta give something. You
Not
gotta
allowed to
give something.
pass?
No.
What can I say about 2 songs I would play?
Mhm.
Can you help frame as a person who's probably your only
So
guest who's
it's
never been to the
the
fireworks?
okay, all right. So it ends with like a grand finale.
Mhm.
Many fireworks in. People are leaving, but they're there for a moment, but they're about to go home.
And they're, like, trying to pump them up, like, you just
It's up to you. You can pump
what
them
kinda
up
mood do you wanna
to
set?
keep them going. You can get them, chilled out. It's all up to you.
This is like yeah, on recording an interview, this is, like, the worst pause I could imagine.
Oh man, it's cool. You thinking. You thinking. You a DJ in thought.
Oh, you do not want me as your DJ. Um, think harder. So, like, musical context for me, most of what my wife and I see are actually a musical theater. That's her big passion, and we see a lot at the Fisher and, University of Michigan has
I'm
a
with it. You can give a musical. Give the
I was
song and
gonna
the
give an
musical.
answer.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, this is probably not relevant for your question, but we just saw Come From Away, highly recommend, is one of my favorite, shows. It opens with, uh well, actually, we were just thinking about, um sorry, it's not what you wanna play, but the opening song from, Come From Away is
Okay.
Welcome to the Rock.
All right. So Welcome from the Rock is one.
Um, and what song would I pick? Because 'Cause I'm thinking about the other show that we have been really moved by is, on Broadway right now. We got to see it in the fall. It's a show called Maybe Happy Ending.
Hmm.
Hard to explain, but, kind of futuristic show about, robots who fall in love, which is a really nobody's gonna wanna see this now after I'm talking about it.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it's a really funny show that, I cried at the end
Mm.
of it. It was just, like, really moved me. Um, and yeah, as a reflection on, like, why do we fall in love? Like, these robots, like, aren't really capable of it, but are. And it's like, these humans, like, why do they do this to themselves? Um, yeah. And the song from that, Since I Got Myself Into This Mess, they're releasing a original Broadway recording the next few weeks, so it's not on the tip of my tongue. Um, we've been listening to The Rainy Day We Met, which is probably not the name of that song, but it has that line in
That
it,
line's in it,
and
and I
I couldn't
love
get
it.
off this question.
And I actually love the fact that you're the first person to bring up the musical. No, that's cool because there we go.
It's
I
something
like it.
that, we did see with my parents growing up. That proximity to New York City is something that we did together,
So Broadway was when you went to the city.
and it's something that my wife is really, like, has a deep passion for, and I've really enjoyed. Like, we've seen yeah, ton of theater, especially at University of Michigan, where they have so talented highly recommend their, musical theater program. You can buy tickets that are not that expensive for those shows in Ann Arbor, and those kids at U of M go straight to Broadway and
Mm.
are starring in shows. This show that I just mentioned has several U of M grads. Like, we have talent here, that you can see now before they're superstars.
Wow. I did not know that. So we
Not your typical answer for your question, I'm sorry.
No, I like it. I like it. I like it. So not a classic one for the non-Detroiter. Alien comes to town. Spaceship lands right outside your crib and it's like, "Hey, take me to the most Detroit thing I can do." Where you taking them?
Well, somebody that loves the outdoors, Belle Isle is my first thought.
That is the number one place where ET and the non-Detroiter go.
Yeah, especially in the summer, like, when Belle Isle is packed, like, that is, a Detroit, like a pull for me that, um, I would jump to the top of the list. You're trying to learn about Detroit and culture, you go to the mo
It's your trip with ET. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotcha.
ET was like, "Yo, I wanna go experience Detroit the most Detroit way." You took him to Belle Isle. I'm with it.
Mhm.
I'm with it. The most that is it so you went from something brand new to something that is a classic. So I'm with it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to it. And you're gonna see more collaborations between Detroit Horsepower and Detroit is Different because we in the same footprint. And I'm looking forward to that very soon in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari, appreciate you.
All right. Peace.